because it's not.
Okay. I was fuzzy.
Remove that destination.
Fuzzy for a second. Now I'm here.
I believe we are live.
I said it. I regret nothing. So
That's what it says. It says we're live. So that's the story I'm going to. That's the story I'm sticking to. That's kind of how we're rolling. I feel like this is one of those days where you just kind of make it work. This is a Tim Gunn moment. It is a make it work moment. That's just how we're rolling today.
oh yeah, we're live. I see myself messing around on the internet.
Yes, we are live. Well, it says we're live. So thanks everybody for coming. We're going to give people a little chance to hop in here. We're just so excited to have you. And as you know, this is the only time I get to say excited. So this is it. This is the one time. But I am so happy. I don't know why she's making faces at me. Why are you making faces?
Who, me? I don't know what you're talking about. There were no faces.
There were no faces?
No.
So welcome. This is Wellness Chat with Dr. Ericka. This is my special pop-in on a Thursday. And tonight I wanted to do something extra special. I have a special guest. When I say special guest, if I could still be in screen, I would jump up and cheer about my special guest today. So my special guest is Joy Stevens. She is an executive coach. She is a diversity and inclusion expert. She's also my best friend, but she's all these great things. She just happens to be a good friend of mine. And I'm so happy to have her on tonight. Excited. Darn it, that's 2 times. So I can't say it. I can't say it one more time. I can't say it at all. So just a couple of housekeeping tips. The first one is if you feel like anybody needs this, tag them. If you feel like anybody needs this, share it. If you're watching it later, no worries. #replay. So what I'm going to do before we get knee deep into this topic is I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Dr. Ericka, double board certified and Harvard trained psychiatrist, integrative lifestyle coach, and best-selling author. I am on a mission to help women feel valued, seen, and whole on their own terms. But I'm coming to you today. It doesn't matter your gender. Shoot, you could be non-binary. I'm here for you. And I'm here to help you get through all of this madness with your sanity intact. So I want to just start off by introducing my guest, which I already told you. She is brilliant. She is smart. She gets paid good money to talk about these topics. So she did me a huge solid by agreeing to come on my show and not charge anyone for all of these nuggets of wisdom that she's about to share. Joy, can you take it away and tell people a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So my name is Joy Stevens, and I am a corporate culture consultant, which is for me a subset of diversity and inclusion. So I really focus on helping companies push their culture forward, be more progressive, be more inclusive, including inclusive of everyone, which is more than just race, more than just gender, more than just uh, potentially differently abled or differently social people. I try to make people understand how to see the humanity in everyone. And when we get to that point, then we can really focus on having representation of all humanity in our company. So I am a corporate culture consultant. I'm also a corporate career coach. Now, for me, I joke amongst my friends that I am the Harriet Tubman of the corporate world, because every time I work with a company, if their culture isn't necessarily what they need it to be, I might free a couple people while I'm there. So that's something else I want you to know. I am absolutely all about helping people move forward, whether it's an individual or with a company.
When you said that, all I could think of was homicide and give us free.
I be breaking chains in corporate America. And
I don't know why I started thinking about the homicide. So we are so happy to have you all here tonight. Excited to share this topic. One of the reasons I wanted to talk about this is right now we're in such a complicated time. And it's a time where it's almost like there's an awakening. There's an awakening of people that are non-Black about what the plight of Black people is. And then also, there are some Black people that are just now realizing that we didn't hit the promised land because Barack Obama was president.
Right.
And due to all of the racial context that's going on with all of the deaths, including Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Rayshard Brooks, those people that were hung, basically lynched in California, that there's just so much going on that the emotional load of it is getting to the point where for a lot of people are feeling overloaded. And it's not just Black people that feel overloaded, but I think the shift is that a lot of times for most people, especially if you see Black people in a professional environment, everyone kind of holds everything in this little box that's in a little container, the little compartment, and we're professional, and you get our professional voices like,
Mhm.
hello, my name is Dr. Goodwin. How can I help you today? And you get all of our professional voices, and it's getting to a point now where the emotions and the frustration of the overall systemic racism and white supremacy is to the point where it can't be just contained into that little box.
Exactly.
So, and in that same vein, while Tuesday we were talking about ways to safely protest, is that there's a lot of conversation about allies. So I wanted to bring someone in that was an expert to actually talk about what this concept is and how it impacts not only the person that wants to be an ally or thinks they want to be and the other option is sometimes people that think they want to be an ally, but they really aren't down for the cause. They really aren't. They aren't down for the amount of work.
You're not about this life.
Not
Yes.
about this life. I started thinking about DMX songs that I can't quote.
Mm.
Um, but they aren't really down. And then just the effect of people wanting to be allies on Black people that already feel stressed.
Mhm.
So that's kind of a layout of what we're talking about. So I just want to go ahead and jump right into it because I know we've been doing a little bit of intro.
Mhm.
Boy, can you tell the people what is an ally?
Okay, so that's a very deep question. An ally is someone who speaks up for, advocates for someone that is of a different marginalized group than they may be. So it basically means when no one else in the room is saying something to support this marginalized group, you speak up and you say something about it. You speak up and you become a part of the conversation, especially and most importantly when that organization, that group, that table that you're at is exclusive of a lot of other people. Being an ally means putting your name, your reputation, sometimes your friendships on the line to do what's right for someone else with no gain to yourself. And that's where it gets hard for a lot of people. Why should I help other people when there's nothing in it for me? Being an ally is very Christian, if you think about it. What? Hey, mommy. But another thing that I want people to understand, being an ally means sometimes it's going to get rough. You're going to face the same sort of mental persecution that a lot of people of color, a lot of people who are non-binary, people who are in different places on the sexual preference spectrum, they face this day in, day out. They live with it. And being an ally means stepping into their world and taking a couple of bullets for them, taking a couple of shots. So the same way, if I write something on the end of an article on CNN, I may get a lot of vitriol back, shut up, you this, you that, you don't know what you're talking about, all of y'all are criminals, et cetera, et cetera. An ally is going to get that same venom. And sometimes they are absolutely not prepared for it. That's why I said you got to really be about this life. Being an ally is 24/7, not just while it's cool at work, not just on the weekends. That doesn't get us any real progress. So if you want to be an ally, you about to get this work, okay? You need to understand that.
Well, and you made a huge point because it's one of those things that being an ally isn't just saying Black Lives Matter in the light. It's about what you do when no one is looking, what you do in your quiet space, what your actual values are. What do you do when the cameras aren't on? What do you do when there's no social media? What do you do when you're not posting that you went to a rally and you have a sign or posting that you love the Blacks? It's what do you do when it's I know I don't even remember who first started talking about the Blacks and some.
I don't know, but you make a really good point, and it's really important to be an ally when no one's looking. To stand up for what's right, even if, like I said, even if you don't gain anything out of it, you're not going to get any more followers. You may even lose some. You're not going to make any more money. It may even cost you, some relationships in your corporate space. But being an ally means knowing that what you're doing is for a higher purpose. It is for the good of all mankind, for all humanity and not just for the moment. Another thing that you mentioned that I want to say, specifically in workspaces or in public places, being an ally means saying something right then. So often we'll have people who, especially in corporate spaces, where they'll see an interaction and they'll wait till it's over. And then they go to the black person, the Latinx person, the LGBTQ person, and say, I saw what happened. That was really terrible. I can't believe that happened to you. I'm so sorry. But they never confront the person that offended them or that belittled them or that invalidated them. They go and they try secretly comfort the minority or whatever. What an ally does is, in the moment, as you're seeing this, hey, this is not cool. What you just said was really offensive. And if you're getting a little too much of yourself, if the person that's being offended is like, no, I got this, you can back up. But step in. Hey, this is offensive. Oh, you got this? I just want to let you know I saw that. I saw what happened. It helps people, it helps with gaslighting, because what'll happen is later on, this person and that person have differing versions of what really happened in the interaction. And without you being there to say, I saw it too, and this is what I observed, all of a sudden she's being too sensitive, or he's just misremembering it, or I was just joking, she took it too far, etc. Help them validate their feelings in the moment. Don't wait until everybody goes away to sneak over to them and say, oh, I'm so sorry that happened. Stand up when there's nothing for you to gain. Stand up when it's the hardest. Hey, right now while this is happening, I saw this and this isn't cool. That is very hard to do, and it's an extremely emotional journey to take to be ready to do that. So I do recognize that too.
Well, and I think it's a huge cultural shift, because it's almost like this culture of just good enough or okay or what is tolerable, and to step outside of what may be tolerable or what doesn't affect you is a huge culture shift, because number one, the culture in the United States tends to be very egocentric, so very focused on the singular person versus focused on the whole.
I got mine, you get yours.
Which we are seeing in hella spades with COVID.
Absolutely.
Don't get me started. You don't get us started. We'll have a whole conversation.
No, okay.
There's a whole 30-minute live in the middle of allies talking about masks. But I think if I had to sum this up into a colloquial term, big words, I'm trying to be like you, is that being an ally is functionally being ride or die.
Yes, that is exactly
ride or die for someone that may not be like you.
Mm-hmm. And you hear that phrase ride or die, and you're like, what does that really mean? It means I will ride with you and I will die with you. That is really what it means. The cause that we are both supporting and going for is so important to both of us. I will get in the car and I will ride with you. I got shotgun, I'll be with you on the road, talking, etc. And when it comes down to it, I'm willing to put my life on the line with you, not for you, with you, and so the ride or die is serious, and if you can get to that level, then there's layers and levels and everything. You can be a intro ally, you can be a junior varsity ally, you can be a PhD ally. It all depends on how much work you want to put into it and how much studying and research you're willing to do. Because here's the thing, being a brand new ally, you're going to get challenged, you're going to have doubts, you're going to have people call you names, and it's going to hurt, and you're going to question, you're going to wonder, is this even really necessary? Understanding the history of why we need specifically allies in the majority will help you to help reinforce your conviction, but also it'll give you that ammunition. So when somebody hits you with, well, what about black on black crime? I got something for that. Let me go to my book here. Well, what about Chicago? I got something for that. Let me go to this article here. And being able to refute a lot of the things that people like to use to deflect is going to help you not be defeated the first time somebody challenges your statements, which is going to happen all the time, every day.
And I love that there's a piece in that you talked about. One is one piece is kind of what your core values are. The second is what your intent is. The
Mhm.
third is education. And I know you'll probably speak about this more, but the importance of, especially for being an ally, it doesn't really work if it's just kind of like, y'all are cool.
Mhm.
That it has to be that educational component of learning about the other culture. It's the cornerstone of what we even call in medicine, they used to call it cultural competency, which is basically understanding other cultures, which by nature allows you to be empathic.
Mhm. We
And
call
at
that
the end of the
diversity and
day,
inclusion too.
pardon me?
We say the same thing in diversity and inclusion, cultural competency. What do you know about your neighbors? Yeah.
Well, and you want to be able to be empathic. And by being empathic, that puts you to a space where at the end of the day, all of us have some type of bias. So I think what happens with some of these conversations is people jump and they're like, I don't have bias. It's like technically
Mhm.
everybody has bias of some.
Mhm. And I want to jump on why people react that way. Because again, you're going to face this if you want to be an ally. I am giving you thousands of dollars worth of free advice right now. But if you want to face
Thank
this
you.
and you want to be an ally, you have to be ready for that cognitive dissonance. You have to be ready for someone to refuse to listen. I have a T-shirt that I wear all the time. It says, prejudice is an emotional commitment to ignorance. They don't want to hear you because they want to maintain their own status quo. They like the way things are. Even if it's not perfect, they're afraid of change. And so they're going to push at you with everything they've got to refute anything you say, even if it doesn't make sense. I had somebody really pose to me the idea that maybe Ahmaud Arbery shot himself with a shotgun. And maybe we don't know because it was off screen. Maybe it was a setup. All of this stuff sounds insane. But people will go to those links to protect their core value, which is I'm not a bad person. Also, if I can for a moment, I want to talk about
Mhm.
binary thinking. And so binary thinking, it's a holdover from when we were cavemen, and you needed to know immediately, do I need to stay or run? Can I eat this or should I not? Like I needed yes or no, black or white, good or bad, good or evil. And we continue with that type of mentality even to today. Like I said, it's hardwiring in your brain, good or bad, no in between. So when someone says something offensive and you say that was offensive, their brain says offensive, bad, evil. And they respond with, I'm not a bad person. I never said you were. I said that the thing that you said can be offensive. And sometimes people cannot get past the idea that you called them racist. And they'd rather focus on the fact that they're not bad versus focusing on the idea that what they said shouldn't be said. And so I want everyone to really challenge their own ability to think in the gray area. I'm not a bad person. Neither is your grandfather who says some outrageous nonsense. But you can teach people how to be better if they want to. It's when they dig in and they decide, I'm not a bad person and I'm going to refute everything you said to protect my idea of me being a good person. That's when they move into that cognitive dissonance. I'm not a racist. I may have done some racist things, but I'm not a racist. So I don't need to do anything else. And everything you're saying is offensive to me now because you're calling me evil and I'm not evil. And so breaking away racism from evil sometimes is what needs to happen in order for people to understand and move past the semantics of it all. You know?
Well, and I think you're bringing up a great point, which is also the power of all of this collective thought,
Mm-hmm.
where this collective thought that felt two steps away from a hive mind with white supremacy, where people were having this singular thought that basically was demonizing black people, or black people are bad, or black people aren't attractive, or black people are only sexual beings, or black people are not smart.
Mm-hmm.
And it's as those get broken so that it's not this collective consciousness of that's what the consciousness is the power for change. And one of the reasons why I think it's so important to have these conversations about allies is, naturally with anything, there are always people that are very resistant to change. And when you feel like your either your way of life or your way of thought is threatened, people they're going to dig their heels in and become defensive.
Mm-hmm.
But the important thing is the more we break all those people that are thinking that way, then they don't have as many people to kind of rally behind them and give them power by having that same racist collective consciousness. So I think a lot of the work you do is extremely important because it helps empower people to do something different. Because there are some people that, just like in politics, there's some folks that are kind of moderate or slide or kind of floating on a line that they may not fully believe this, they may not be all the way over here, but this is what I was raised in and I'm comfortable in. So they
Right.
just sit there because it's comfortable. And I think what is going on with the conversations we're having, the conversations that you have, with the type of work you do, along with all these people that are working just tirelessly in DNI and also in a lot of the advocacy, is being in a place to help people be able to see the logic and the fact behind why some schools of thought just don't stand up. They don't stand up to any facts. It's just random beliefs that people have held
Hmm.
on to forever. And if people want to put in the chat, please put in the chat if you've had any experiences with racism or experiences that you've seen where there was someone that just came up with some stuff that was totally outrageous and they were determined it was true. Anything even as small as people thinking that all black people use Crisco in their hair.
What?
You never heard when you were a kid that some white people thinking that black people use Crisco in their hair? Is that a Midwest thing?
Body put cooking oil in their hair.
No, we wouldn't do it, but people would wonder it. I can't make that up.
I believe you. I believe you. That's crazy though. But again, that comes from a lack of exposure. And so a lot of people, in order to maintain their bubble of uh, misbelief, they don't want to meet anybody. They don't want to talk to anybody because that means you're going to challenge their status quo and they just don't want to do it. Can't save them all. But you can, as you mentioned, you can limit their ability to influence others. We said we weren't going to talk about COVID and masks and everything. But if you think about it, racism is a disease, right? And so if you want to limit its spread, you need everybody else that's able to put that mask on, stop those bad ideas from infecting anyone else. When you see something, spray it. Hey, no, we're not doing this today. You
Where the
know,
other taking a raid?
right. Let me sanitize your mind real quick, to protect you from this nonsense over here. It takes a concerted effort because it will spread. It will continue to spread. Every 2 generations, we think that we have gotten out of it, and something shows up to tell us we absolutely have not. But we also make a little bit of progress every time we go like this. There's a little progress and a little further and a little progress. Then you take a step back and sometimes we feel, especially in the last few years, like we have taken several major steps back. But here we have this moment to take a huge leap forward. People are talking about racism in a way that I haven't seen in my lifetime. People are using the word racism, where I remember when I first started doing diversity and inclusion, I couldn't even put that word into my presentations because it made people uncomfortable. Now I'm leading race relations and systemic racism talks every day, because people are finally, you know, here's the thing. When you talk about change and I talk about people being resistant to change, as a change agent or doing change management in a company, you have this underlying thought. You have to make the pain of change less than the pain of staying the same. Or conversely, you have to make the pain of staying the same so high that you have no choice but to change. And right now, I think we're seeing people recognize that the pain of staying where we are is so high. There's nothing we can do but change. We cannot stay where we are. And which is when you get into civil unrest and protests and marches and rallies, where, especially now that we have more people of different colors, specifically more white people joining into this, everyone is like, this is too much. This is enough. We've got to do something different. So we cannot lose this moment. And so for the people, again, the allies out there, it's a complex situation. You're going to have family members that are going to think that you have become a social justice warrior, which is a new euphemism for loving someone of another race. There used to be a phrase that they said in the 60s, a blank lover, that was very pejorative. And so someone saying social justice warrior to you in a negative way, that's what they're saying. and you're going to get snowflake or bleeding heart liberal or all kind of things that they're going to call you. And just remember that this too shall pass. And it's okay for them to think what they want to think, as long as you make sure that you stand for what you want to stand for. And that's why I say you need to understand the history. You need to understand the purpose of being an ally, why it's important to do it in the moment and to live that way day in, day out. Because if you falter, a lot of things you could pull down a lot with you. Like think about being an anchor for an area. If you fall, everybody falls. If we give up the fight stops. So we need everyone to continue on in spite of the mental um, heavy lifting that we're asking you to do.
Well, and I think you're making a great point. There's some things we still need to make it through or to. But one of the things I think that's important is the importance of education for allies, but there also is an importance of education for for Black people, because it's still looking at the situations where it's it's a lot easier to get gaslighted or to get comfortable when you're not necessarily faced or thinking of the history. And what's more difficult for us is the experience of what our history is very different for people that aren't us, which is a little bit different than if you look at people of Jewish descent in the Holocaust, that a lot of people feel very badly about the Holocaust, and it doesn't matter what their ethnicity is, that everyone can agree that the Holocaust was bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the difficult thing is when you start looking at slavery, Jim Crow, systemic racism, and those kinds of things, and health disparities, that there's not that same kind of value on life put on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important for all of us to be significantly educated so that as Black people and equivalent of children of the African diaspora, that we hold ourselves also accountable for what we and our people deserve.
Yeah.
Um, but I also think from the education standpoint, something we had wanted to talk about is kind of how to handle the issue if someone genuinely wants to become an ally, and how they get this education that they're looking for. Because at times, especially if people are feeling overwhelmed or anxious or frustrated or just extremely emotional, and it's a very, very tight tightrope a lot of people are doing, because adulting, just like adulting didn't stop for COVID, adulting didn't stop because we've hit a racial tipping point.
Right.
So people are still having to take care of their families, to make some attempt to work, and in that way can't afford to be falling apart or just to be so emotionally overwhelmed that they can't function. So can you talk a little bit about what are some realistic expectations that someone that wants to be an ally should have when trying to get educated so that they can be the best ally they can be, and also some expectations or ways that people that are Black can handle people approaching them that want to be allies?
Okay, so two things: how to get in where you fit in with being an ally, and then how to be Black and handle the requests for help that you may be receiving. So, how to get in where you fit in. I said earlier, you've got your bunny slope, your baby allies, you've got your junior varsity, you got your PhD. You need to figure out what level you're comfortable with. I have no problem with people using a hashtag, blacking out their profile, reposting articles and things that they found because they want to support. I appreciate that. I welcome it. And if that is the extent of what you're comfortable doing, okay, that's fine. Everybody can't be out in the street marching. Everybody can't go to DC and stand on the steps of the Capitol and take 2 days off work and do that. Sometimes, you got kids to feed, you have spouse to take care of, you have bills to pay, and it's just not feasible. But again, we can all speak up when we see something happening. Even you can go hard in the paint. You can say, hey, what I just saw was nonsense, and we're not going to let that happen. And I'm standing with you, my minority friend, blah, blah, and I saw it too, to help with that gaslighting. Or you can just say, that was rude, and keep it moving. What is your level? How deep do you want to go? I would encourage everyone, Facebook fights are not worth it. Most people are going to stay where they stay. Here's how you spot someone that you might be able to have a decent conversation with. If they say something like, I don't know what to believe, okay, there's a crack in that door that you may want to be able to go through and talk to them about, well, here's some history and here's some information that I can share with you. But if they start saying things like, that's fake news and I deal in facts and you're dealing in emotion, stop right there. There's no point in having that conversation. They've already decided how it's going to end, and it ends with you losing. Doesn't matter how long it takes. Go ahead and go to bed because you're not going to win. But I think on a day to day, like, what does it take to, like, how can you figure out how you want to be an ally? How much time do you have? How much research do you want to do? And how deep do you want to go? You can go Jane Elliott deep and start giving TED Talks, or you can go, um, Brenda on the weekends deep and just know enough to refute some of the more widely spread propaganda like black on black crime and what about Chicago and black people do all the crime and that's why they go to jail. Especially if you hear someone say things like they deserve what they got. I love to counter that with the question, are you telling me that because someone fell asleep in a driveway, they deserve to die? That's what you're telling me. And sometimes it'll make people back up. Well, that's not what I meant. You're confusing things with it. Just walk off. Drop that bomb and walk off. Um, I would also say there's different ways to get knowledge. You can read a lot of books, takes a lot of time. You can watch a lot of videos, takes slightly less time. You can watch documentaries, somewhere in the middle. Um, there's a few things that you can look up on YouTube that will give you a good understanding of systemic racism. Just go to YouTube and look up the word redlining, and that will give you that. There should pop up 5 or 6 different videos that will give you a historical context around why we have ghettos now, why there is such a disparity in family wealth from a white family to a black family. Go and look up the United Daughters of the Confederacy. It's one of my favorites because that gives you context as to why there are so many monuments to Confederate generals across the South, why the Heart of Dixie was a song sung across the South, why textbooks in a lot of elementary schools and middle schools across the South say things like slave owners held parties for their slaves. That didn't happen. There's numerous rebellions that happened that got squashed, never made the news because they didn't want the narrative to be that the slaves are unhappy. So they never tell the story. So doing that sort of research, you'll find 5, 6, 7 videos on YouTube. And once you start watching a couple, the algorithm will bring the rest of them to you. You can lose a whole day getting educated. Some of it's going to make you cry. That's okay. We've been crying for a long time. You can cry for a weekend. And some of it will really open your eyes. And save those videos next time somebody comes to you and says, well, I don't know what to believe. Here's some videos that I watched that will really help you out. And I think that is a level of research that anybody can do. If we can watch cats on Facebook for 20 minutes, we can watch a video on systemic racism for 10. Okay, so that I think everyone can accomplish. Oh, the other part of your question was Black people. How do you deal with these renewed interest in your life? I think the first thing you want to do is set boundaries with the people that are coming to you, because what they're asking you to do, and you need to make them aware of this, what they're asking you to do is reopen wounds that you had to close by yourself. Nobody was there when it happened to you. It may have happened 5, 6, 7 years ago, but underneath that scar, that wound is still raw, and they're asking you to open it so they can look. Everybody isn't able to do that. And I think helping them to understand the emotional trauma that they are asking you to put yourself through can sometimes at least give them a little more context. Like, if you want to know about this is painful for me to talk about. And so, maybe that will help them understand that they can do a little bit more research. Because the worst thing you can do as an ally or as a hopeful ally is to have someone share a story with you and for you to question the veracity of that story. It's worse than not telling you in the first place. So be cognizant of that. Somebody sharing their pain with you is not a time for you to ask about statistics and the Watts riots and LA and Chicago and all these other things. That has nothing to do with this person. But if you educate yourself ahead of time about the Watts riots and how Los Angeles County brought in sheriffs and cops from Alabama and Mississippi to handle the black problem in LA. That's what led to the Watts riots. That's what led to the rise of the Black Panther Party, because they were being harassed by the police in the 60s. And we found ourselves here again. Having that context changes some people's even understanding of who the Black Panthers even were. So you can look all that up on your own. Do not ask your Black friends to do your homework for you. In this moment, do as much reconnaissance and research as you can, and then talk to them with an elevated sense of history before you even go talk to them. That would be my advice.
Well, I think you brought up some huge points, and what I would add to that is, along with setting boundaries, is that number one, it's not everyone's Black personal responsibility to become the Black people encyclopedia. We are not the Black Wikipedia. So there are some specific strategies that you can use to help kind of diffuse that, especially if you're feeling emotionally overwhelmed, because sometimes you're appreciative that someone is interested. You just really aren't in the mood, just to put it politely.
I feel like it.
You don't feel like it, you're not in the mood, you're already overwhelmed. And those are times where it's good, just search a couple of internet links or tell them someplace to go. And they approach you and you say, I'm really glad you're interested or you care. I'm not ready to talk about that right now, but why don't you go look at this? And you can give links. Some people go as far as actually just having a resource list that they just like, I'll email it to you, so that you're still encouraging them without taking on that emotional burden if you're overwhelmed. And if you're someone that is looking to become an ally, don't become offended if someone's not ready to talk right then, or if they give you resources. So naturally right now, Netflix has put out a whole list of things. Amazon Prime has, and actually I think they even have Hollywood Shuffle on there.
Hollywood Shuffle is a really good movie.
It is. And then I can't remember if Hulu has a section. They probably do, because I feel like all these conglomerates got together. But the interesting thing is all the lists on each platform are not necessarily the same. And the easy thing about that is you don't have to search for anything. It's just like there's usually either a tab or it's one of the top things up there. And it's like basically equivalent to saying Black stuff.
It literally on Hulu says Black stories.
And then you can just scroll through, and some of it's going to be documentaries. Some of it'll be just fact-based movies that aren't in documentary format. Some will be fiction that is covering past stories. And that's an easy way. And then if you just search kind of resources for allies or reading lists, then there are quite a few that it'll give you a link. I think Good Morning America even had one. And a lot of them aren't that long. It's like 5 to 10 books, or they'll have articles, or they may have some specific YouTube clips or thing that's good to look at. And those are good resources. And I'd encourage everyone. That's nice if you're Black, if you just have a couple of them that you put in the notes section on your phone or something. And then if someone asks you and you're just not in the mood to talk about it at that time, or someone you just don't know that well, and you're like, this isn't the time and place for this conversation, that you have something you can just give them really easily, which I think is really helpful. And talking about the influence all of us have, I'd like to just quickly segue over to the conversations that are now being had, or questions about conversations that have to do with race, racism, and children, especially as it pertains to children that are Black versus children that are non-Black. Is there anything you'd like to say about that, Joy?
Wow. So this one is tough because everybody's very protective of their children, and a lot of people want to shield their kids from the real world. And this is something that you can only shield them from for so long. And once they are unshielded, it's up to you from what you've conditioned them to be ready for, whether it's going to be a shock to them or they're going to be ready for it. And a lot of Black families, we already know, they have the talk with their kids. The first time something happens and your child comes home and says, Mommy, somebody was mean to me and they called me this. And we have that discussion. But white families and some other families are not necessarily doing that. And so I think if you want to be an ally and you want to raise little allies, then the conversation doesn't have to be super deep. You don't have to talk about systemic racism and redlining and European colonialism. You just have to tell them sometimes, based on the way people look, people treat them differently. But in this family, we don't do that. We judge people by how they treat us. And so if someone is mean to you, let me know. But if someone if someone else says something about somebody, ask them, are they a nice person? Are they rude? Are they polite? And are they smart? Those type of things, so that you can start to get them away from judging someone by the color of their skin and instead by the content of their character, right? And it's easier when they're young, but you have to do it when they're young, because by the time they get to middle school, they will have heard things, they will have seen things where you're not with them that could alter their perception, especially when it comes to the idea of the crucified white man. And what I mean by that is, if you have no context to the past and somebody tells you that black kid didn't have to pay to go to this school, you're going to wonder, why does the black kid get all the free stuff? What's that about? How come I don't get free stuff? On one of the calls that I was on recently, a woman said that she's white, and her daughter said, how come nobody cares about my life? And this is a little white girl she has no experience with the world. So all she knows is, it seems like people only care about black people right now. What about me? So giving them that exposure and giving them just a little bit of history, you don't have to go deep, but well, in the past, they've been treated wrong and they weren't allowed to do a lot of things. So now we try to rectify that by, trying to make up for it in different ways. Sometimes it can be a scholarship. Sometimes it could be moving them to different places, et cetera, to try and correct the sins of the past. And that conversation is age appropriate for, elementary school and middle school. There's also, again, Google can be your friend. If you Google talking to my kids about racism, you will get 10 or 15 books that will help you with this. But you're going to have to read at some point. It's not always going to be someone there to tell you this is exactly what to say. Read the books, do the work. We all got degrees to go to get jobs. We all went to college to get educated. Spend a weekend reading a book to help with this.
Well, and one of the other important things when it comes to dealing with children is children are going to develop their personalities when they're young.
Mm-hmm.
That's also the time when they develop their core values. And a lot of times, children, naturally, we all know they're impressionable. So the first place they're going to go to learn these things are going to be from their parents in their household. If you do not teach them these things, then they're going to absorb it from their environment. And what we find very often is young children have had experiences in race, even if that's not the lens that they put the context into. So it's important, especially if you're non-Black, to have conversations with your children about valuing differences, so that they understand. And then also to have some children's books or things around that have people that look different than them in them, so that it also starts normalizing that everything they're surrounded with. I know we've talked a lot about white people, just as an example, but everyone that's not Black isn't necessarily white.
Right.
It's that people, all they see is white faces, all they see that's supposed to be good is white, then it's weird that we would have an expectation that they would adopt any other value. So it's important to start working on those core values when they're younger, so that they're not impressed upon by the environment to then start having racist biases because they weren't taught something else at home.
Right. If you leave a void there, it will be filled by someone else. So you have to fill that gap whenever you can. Get them all the dolls. If you get all the Disney princesses, there's pretty good representation in there sooner or later. So make sure you pick up Moana and Tiana and Pocahontas, all of them. Even though a couple of them are stereotypical, they still.
Can we give Mulan a little shout out too?
Say what?
Mulan.
Mulan, yes, I forgot about Mulan. Yes, all of them. Get all of them, and then maybe a couple more, and you're good to go. I just want to make sure that people understand what you're talking about is the images representation on television. Make sure that let your kids watch Doc McStuffins and see a different version of Black people from the stereotypes that they may see on the news or hear about from their friend's dad or something like that. So make sure that they have positive images of all kinds of people early on, before they're 5. Because I know that you always tell me this is wrong, but I'm gonna say it again. Once they're 5, that's pretty much you got what you got. Once you get to 5, it's over. So make sure you expose them as early as you can.
Well, I know we've been on for a while. I want to first say thank you for everyone for joining. I must say thank you for everyone that's watching it later because I know some of you will catch it later. I know this is a little bit of a heavy topic, but I just want to make sure that I do my part to help people have a well-rounded experience with their mental wellness because there's so much to deal with right now that we're armed with the truth and the knowledge that's necessary to move forward and to be able to be agents of hope to somehow find a way to make things better. Because I think at the end of the day, that a lot of the people that are looking to allies, and then a lot of the people that are, in this case, Black, that want better, that at the end of the day, we want there to be a loving place where people actually have enough equity to live the lives that they were created for, that they deserved, and to have the freedom to actually live in their purpose. And unfortunately, a lot of times that sometimes being able to live your purpose is a privilege, which is whack.
Right.
That everyone should be able to have the opportunity to live their purpose. So, this as we start to wrap up, Joy, is there anything you want to leave people with?
Yeah, and thank you for putting my LinkedIn under this. So if you work for a company and you think they need to talk about this, hit me up on LinkedIn, and I will do my best to help them move their culture forward a little bit. But one thing I want to remind everyone: when we talk about the American dream, it is verbatim life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And until everyone who is an American citizen can say that they feel that they can have a good life, have liberty, and pursue happiness, we're not there yet. So until everyone can say it, we're not there yet. And we need to find the groups that are not there and get them there, which is why Black Lives Matter.
Thank you. That was a phenomenal way to wrap up. I don't know what I'm going to do with that now. I feel like you said all the words. You said all the words.
All the words.
All the words. But one of the things I think that's important in this context is the fact that along with the thought of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or life, is that what life, not life and justice for all? I'm about to I'm remixing all of it. But the other thing is in there is just people having the basic right to live.
Mm-hmm.
That unfortunately, it's almost a privilege sometimes in this country to just be able to breathe,
Right.
which is utterly ridiculous. That it's an effort to breathe, and at the end of the day, I think it's one of the biggest things is for us to be able, as we affect change. To me, one of the biggest things is making the world safe, making it safe, and it's safe so that people feel like they have safe spaces, to have emotional safe spaces, to have physical safe spaces, and for those not to only, I mean, there's a time we'd say your safe space is your house, but right now you might get shot and killed in it. You just don't know. And I think what we're dealing with is that part of the reason we're in the space we're in now is every time we hear about one of these deaths, it takes away a safe space.
Right.
So, with Tamir Rice, it took away the safe space of a kid playing in the park.
Mm-hmm.
Ahmaud Arbery, you can't just go take a jog.
Right.
You
But
know,
can't even be asleep. You know.
Michael Brown, you can't go to the Quickie Mart. It's just something. Breonna Taylor, you can't just be in your house. Sleep.
Right.
Um,
You can't call a tow truck and ask for help. You can't knock on someone's door at night, hoping that they'll, let you, help you with your car that's broken down. Anything can get you
you
killed.
might not even be able to walk into your own house.
Right. You can't go shopping. You can't go to Walmart. You can't do anything without potentially losing your life. And that's an extremely high stress way to live.
And I think our goal is to be able to start turning more spaces into safe spaces. And it starts with little safe spaces. And even by having these dialogues and by corporations and businesses starting to even get into these conversations, it helps create more safe spaces, including safe spaces at work. So I think it's just important to continue to make, and create these safe spaces. And with this work with allies, I know there were times where, especially when I was living in Boston, where I experienced a lot of racism, but
Mhm.
I didn't have a safe space where I was working. And the good thing is people get more educated, then they can make an effort to make sure that these spaces are safe.
Right.
So to me, that's one of the hugest things. So I guess it's about time to wrap up. I want to say again, thank you all so much for taking time. And please, if you feel like anybody needs this, tag them or share it. If you're watching it later, put hashtag replay in the comments. Feel free to also comment later. That would be helpful. Oh
Hmm.
yes, or ask a person to put their dog on a leash. It's always something. Always something, Wendy. Always something. But I just want to say thank you for spending time. I know there are so many things pulling on everyone. The fact that you intentionally chose some time for us means a lot. So I'm Dr. Ericka, double board certified psychiatrist, and as Joy reminds me to tell everyone, Harvard trained.
Right.
And I'm also a best-selling author. I'm on a mission to help women feel seen, valued, and whole on their own terms. But I'm also here. It doesn't matter your gender. It just matters that you are able to live the purpose that you have. And one of the things I do to help deal with that is I have a telepsychiatry practice. I see adults, but if you're feeling overwhelmed, feel like you need some help, know that someone needs some help, feel free to contact me. Right now, I'm seeing patients in Georgia and Tennessee, soon to be Massachusetts also. You can go to askdrgoodwin.com. That is askdrgoodwin.com. You can get a 15-minute consultation. It's free. There's literally nothing to lose. But what I don't want is for people to lose quality of life and time because they were struggling when they didn't have to. And what we've seen is the emotional consequences of all of this stress and just feeling bad emotionally and mentally has physical long-term consequences. And I don't want that for you. So again, thanks for coming. Many blessings. Thanks again, Joy, for coming on. And you have your everyday prescription to call at least one person and tell them that you love them. That's all I got for you tonight. Take care.